Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday, and we have a session today with Karina Birch from Rocky Mountain Soap. I'm so super excited about this because here in Vancouver, we actually don't have a retail location anymore, do we? We have a lot of distribution here, but I've been hearing a lot about Rocky Mountain Soap from people I know in Victoria, and obviously it's so big in Alberta, where we have a lot of presence for Imam now. So just really excited to talk with Karina about being a mom, being a president of a big company, and just also having the sustainability angle in her business and all of that. So welcome, Karina.
Great, it's great to be here. Thanks, Christine. And I should tell you that we have 2 stores opening in Vancouver in the fall.
Yeah, I was really happy to hear that. Do you have any idea where they might be at, or can you share that at all, or?
I can't share it yet, but maybe in another 2 weeks.
Okay. Are you looking at a mall, or would it be like a street?
It's a mall. Yeah. They're
Okay,
both
well,
malls.
I have good guesses.
Probably yes.
So we were just talking about a book you were using to kind of inspire you around getting stuff done, and it's actually called Getting Things Done. Is that right?
That's right. It's by David Allen, and it's a really short, easy read. It's excellent.
And so for that, you were saying, like, we were just talking about apps right before we came on here, and you were recommending one called AnyDo and one called, and then Evernote. Is that right?
That's right. So those are the 2 apps that I use religiously that really rule my life. Actually.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be talking a lot about being a mom and an entrepreneur and all of that. So, organizing your life is so critical when you're trying to juggle all of those things, right? So before we dive into all of that, I just want to let everybody know that we are going to be monitoring our Twitter feed, and we're particularly using the hashtag #EmomNow. So if anyone wants to ask a question, just feel free to do that, and we will pass it on to Karina. It's just such a great chance to be able to connect, not necessarily one-on-one, but just really ask her any of these burning questions that you might have for somebody who has taken basically a almost cottage business, right, when you bought it, and then turned it into a pretty substantial company. So, why don't we start with that, like the story about Rocky Mountain Soap, how you came about to become an owner of the company, and kind of what makes, just a little bit more about what makes Rocky Mountain special from a sustainability and natural perspective.
Sure. Well, so I left university after I graduated with a business degree and moved to Canmore, because that's where my boyfriend was at the time. He's now my husband and business partner. And when I got to Canmore, I realized that it's a very, very much a hospitality center or town. And there was nothing there that was really fueling my need to get into more of a career. So I started my own HR company, and then 6 months after that, Cam and I walked into the Rocky Mountain Soap Company. We bought it as an existing business. And it was a woman who started it out of her home and really just started making products for her own skin sensitivities. And she ran that for about 4 years out of her home. And then her and her husband decided they were going to move to one of the Caribbean islands and decided to sell her company. And before she sold it, she decided to open up a retail store to really fully, realize this vision that she had for the company in her mind. So she opened the retail store, and then we bought it about within a year after she opened it. And I was right out of university. I've never worked what I call for a real company, a company that is organized and structured and at a certain size. And so I really came into the company very naive. And I've said this many times that I think that was a real advantage for me, is not having any experience, but having a lot of passion and energy and drive. And then it was about 4 years in where we sat down with our very small team of employees and said, we're mostly natural, but we have a couple products that have a synthetic fragrance in them. And it never really sat right with us. And we said, like, is this something we want to do? Or do we want to draw a line in the sand today to say, no, like, from this point on, It's 100% natural. And it only took a few minutes before we realized there was only one choice, and that was to go 100% natural. But you have to remember that this was, 10 years ago, and at that time, nobody was doing it to that level. So what we did, the handcuffs that we put on ourselves at that time was tremendous. It really, it meant our toolbox went from here to here of ingredients that we could use for formulation. And really, on the supply side for our raw materials and, some chemists that we were working with on contract, it was pushing the boundaries all the time. But that work that we did up front to work through some of the challenges of making natural products is benefiting us now, because now you see that there's a push now from consumers and from the manufacturing side, and everybody's wanting to go that route. And so it's nice to know that we're now supported on all sides, and we have some experience that's really lending itself to become a little bit more sophisticated in our development now. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot more awareness today about natural products, particularly skincare. I mean, I think a lot of people realize when you eat, what you're eating obviously gets absorbed into your body, and people can get concerned about that. But I think not a lot of people, some people who might be eating that way might not necessarily be so stringent about what they're putting on their actual body.
Yes.
And yet, I was talking with someone who also does formulations, and he was saying that it's so difficult to do a natural sunscreen, for example, because there was something in, I don't know, to be honest, Karina, but there was something that people generally put in sunscreen that is not a natural ingredient.
Yeah, well, sunscreen, you can do a natural sunscreen, but it's really hard to do a natural non-whitening sunscreen.
Right.
So, and with that, so the way the technology has evolved in sunscreen is the use of nanotechnology. So they're taking what is a natural ingredient, so zinc or titanium dioxide, and they're cutting it down so small that it's nano-sized. Mm. So you can make a natural sunscreen, but you're putting a nano ingredient on your skin. And what a lot of people don't realize is not only do nano ingredients absorb very quickly through the skin, but they're also thought to absorb at a cellular level. So that takes the idea of, what you mentioned about what we eat is absorbed in our body, and then the idea that what you put on your skin is absorbed. Well, nanoparticles is taking that, times 100. It's not just getting absorbed into your bloodstream, but potentially into your cells. And are our bodies, and then the whole discussion around this, in not just in our industry, but in, air quality and water and food, and is this whole idea of body burden. So that's just one chemical that we're absorbing, and nanoparticles get absorbed at a much, much higher level. But what else are we doing that's also being absorbed and stored in the body, and are our bodies built to be able to remove that amount of chemicals or toxins, out of the body? So it's this whole idea of body burden, which is, something we talk about a lot. Toxicologists are big on it. It's a real buzz. It has been a buzzword for a while, but it really does get a lot of attention.
Well, I just think it's just amazing, because as you called them the handcuffs, because you really went to make a decision around sustainability, and it really does, I don't want to say limit, because that's not really the best word, but it does really put constraints about not only what types of products you can develop, but it also does affect your pricing strategy, your marketing, how you're going to bring to market. So, and like it's particularly 10 years ago, that's a very brave decision to make, because unlike now, there wasn't as much education about it back then. And even today, I find that people don't quite understand the whole natural stream. So, to take that stance is pretty incredible. I wanted to shift gears a bit and just go back to what you said about being naive and how kind of not knowing made you being able to, weather this whole thing a bit better. And so, you've said that leadership is knowing how to foster great conversations, right? And so I want to know, it doesn't sound like being fresh out of university that you had a lot of experience applying leadership in the corporate world. So what were some of the things that you did to kind of overcome those things that you were realizing that you needed to get to speed on? And, what are some tips around that you can share with people?
Well, I think it comes down to a few things. One is I'm an avid reader.
Mm-hmm.
Articles, anything I can get my hands on, and it changes, as to what topic I'm into at the moment. And then I really believe in having a strong network. So, for me, that's evolved into different ways over the last few years. But initially, it was, calling up people that, I really didn't know that I wanted, that I think had some value to add to what I needed to learn at the time. Example, this is more on just the formulation side for soap, is because, remember, I just had some training from the original owner, and I didn't have a background in chemistry or formulation. So, for many years, I took that's where I focused was on aromatherapy, formulation, and soap. So attending conferences, reading books, engaging with industry experts, and yeah, so really, it's I think it really actually just comes down to being curious, and part of that is a love of learning, but part of that is just even what I'm thinking of is that even if it's not an expert that you're tapping into, I think everybody can add value to something that you're thinking about at the moment. They don't have to be an expert, so really listening to people and being able to extract value out of all different types of conversations. And then what happens is, and this is what I'm also linking to good leadership, is the ability to see patterns. So as I talk to 20 different people about a same topic from all different backgrounds, you start to see threads. And I'm starting to today start to think about that as we start to plan how we'll use technology in the future. So yeah, there's lots of things I think that come together when you just continue to have conversations, to be curious, to learn and read, and then all of a sudden these dots start to connect, and a picture starts to form, and then that's where we have now a new vision and a new way of doing something. One and a big pivotal moment for me actually was for a couple of years, after we had decided we were going to draw the line in the sand and be 100% natural. And it was very difficult, but then other companies started to greenwash the term natural. So we said, well, it really bothered us that we were working so hard to be so strict on natural, and lots of competitors were coming in and throwing the term around, and consumers believed that they were just as natural. So we really felt like that wasn't a source of differentiation for us, that we couldn't just hang our hat on that. And it took me about a year of really just thinking about it, talking to people, really asking the same question over and over and over again, is that enough? And then it came to the point, which seems so obvious now, is that in order for us to really be natural the way we envision it, is to live that not just in our formulation, but in our built environment and our packaging as well. So then we went on the journey to redo the whole built environment for our retail stores, and said, well, if we applied the same level of strictness and the same filter as we build out our stores, what would that look like? And that started another journey that took another 3 years of building out our new store concept, which fits very nicely to what we're doing on the formulation side. And then the next project that we're engaging in right now is, well, what if we took that same lens and applied it to our packaging? Because what is very interesting is that, and I have a lip butter here, it's one product I can't live without, but your lip butter, the product maybe lasts, what, a month, 3 months if you don't lose it? But the container could be here for 300 years. There's a massive disconnect between what's inside the package and the package itself. So we're attempting to figure out the solution to closing that gap.
What are you going to do about that, the lip butter? Is it like a glass container, or, I mean?
Well, paper is starting to become more of an option. Maybe bulk packaging as well, refillable. There's still lots of ideas we're looking at the moment. It's actually, I think this is going to be the most challenging project we've done to date, actually.
So difficult. I mean, we obviously talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and we here because of we deal with a lot of mom entrepreneurs, and we deal with a lot of experts as yourself just on this on Google Hangouts for eMom Now TV Live. And one thing I love about what you were just talking about was this concept of how being natural isn't just greenwashing. It's not just something that you're using because you want to sell more product and because it's the buzzword of the day. You've actually incorporated it deep into your brand as a customer. And so not as a customer, as a company. And a lot of people don't really understand that brand isn't just a logo. It's not just a bunch of colors that are on your website or your marketing materials. That it actually goes further than that and can really dictate, the depth of what your company is all about. And is that something that you went through just all on your own, or did you, what was that process like? Did you end up hiring somebody to help you with any of this, or how was that? How did that go?
You know what? Because we have always operated, we've always been self-funded, and we've always grown the business within our means. We have never had big budgets to go out and solicit experts to help us build the brand. It's very much been homegrown. Now, having said that, there has been moments in the past where we've gone outside to get some help to just start to craft it in a way that's a little bit more thought out. And I always used to think, again, because the soap company is my biggest experience in running a company, I always had this impression that there was somebody else who could help us more on brand than what we were doing. And the few instances in the past where we've gone outside to get help, it's really just fallen flat. And what it's really shown me is that it hasn't worked for us in my experience, and I'm not saying it doesn't work for everybody, because I know lots of instances where it has. But for us, it's worked to really just rely on who we are and just start to feel what that is like internally and build that framework, I guess, internally in our own way. So we actually haven't had a lot of help, other than we've read some branding books, we've talked to branding people. Actually, and having said that, we did have a brand strategist work with us for a year doing some things, but it was really just getting what we had in our head and just starting to make sense of it so that we could just fine tune it a bit. But like 80%, 85% of what we've done has really been internally from ourselves.
Awesome. So you were talking about, I mean, it sounds like your process to kind of get ramped up on all of this was a lot of reading, a lot of networking and conversations, and just this natural sense of curiosity. I'm just going to go really tactical here. And, you mentioned that you would call people up that you didn't know. And that can be kind of daunting to some people, mompreneurs who are starting out. And so do you have any tips around that, about how to approach people, how not to approach people, things that got you great results, and maybe things that you wish you tried differently?
Yeah, I think the first one is just to do it. We can talk ourselves out of a lot of things. And I'm always amazed how, when I put myself out there, really magic starts to happen. And I think that if you're really passionate about what you're doing, and you're very genuine about how you see the person that you're calling adding value to you, people love to be able to be the one that adds value. So, when you reach out and you're really vulnerable to say, this is where I'm at, this is where I could use some help, and I have a feeling that you might be able to help me, people love that. So I think it's just being genuine, authentic, and vulnerable to what you need. And I know this is a couple of years ago, but I had met Sean Durfee from WestJet very briefly. It was he came in to speak to a group that I was part of, and I really only talked to him for 5 minutes. And then a couple months later, I was having some issues that I thought actually his experience would lend itself really nicely, and called him out of the blue, and it was amazing. We ended up working together for a year, and he helped us through just some organizational challenges, and it's been excellent. And I have lots of experiences like that, so I think you really just have to put yourself out there.
Mm-hmm. I would also add, recently I was talking to a very senior person from, media company. This man named Kevin Shea, actually, who was the former CEO of YTV and COO of Canvas Global. And he was obviously exceptionally experienced, and as a media company, he has so much information that he can give me and things like that. And at the end of it, I said to him, how can I be of service to you? Like, how can I help you in all of this? Because, I felt like I had no currency to really give him back, right, other than that. And I think he was really, he was actually taken aback that I even had offered it, because, but I think this idea of, because oftentimes people will go into these conversations, and if they don't have that air of authenticity about them, it can almost feel like a bit of taking sometimes. So as long as you come in it with this idea of, respecting the person's time, being authentic and real about what you are asking, people want to align with people who are genuine, right? And who honestly could be using the help. So let's shift gears about being a mom a little bit, okay? And how many kids do you have again?
I have 3.
And then I seem to recall they're around my daughter's ages, right?
Yeah, they're 9, 6, and 3. So I've got 2 older girls, and then the youngest is a little boy.
Yeah, so they're exactly the same. And I was joking, like my little one thinks that she's a boy anyway, so we've got the same, right? So, one of these things that people are always talking about is balance. How do you balance things? And so what's your attitude towards balance? So what is your attitude about balance, and what are kind of some advice, tips, nuggets that you can share with us about that?
Well, I've tried it for a while, tried to achieve balance, and it makes you miserable, because it's a goal, like, especially from my experience, because life is so crazy that when you try to achieve balance, you go insane. Actually, you break down. And I think what I've learned is the better way to think of it is, what are your priorities? Because if you're going to treat everything the same and be in balance and be the best wife, the best mother, the best CEO, and take care of yourself, it's absolutely impossible at this phase in my life anyway. And so, after I learned the hard way of how difficult that was, and I am a total perfectionist, so I took it very seriously to try to achieve balance. And then, I realized that wasn't going to work. And so now I think it's about focus and priorities. And you have to throw balance out the window, I think.
Yeah, that is a common sentiment these days, I find. Like many very successful women as yourself who've been through this journey, they often arrive at that conclusion that balance is just not a obtainable task, and that it really is. Someone I know, Jill Earthy, often calls it flow. This idea of being in flow, and that there will be things that will not be high and that will not be in flow. So it's focusing on those things that are in flow, and having those priorities straight helps you kind of move that flow along the path. You said something. You say this: achieving balance is like nailing Jello to the wall. So what do you mean by that?
Well, I just think that you'll never do it. You'll never achieve it. I mean, maybe when all the kids have left home and we've downsized into a condo, and maybe then. But then I don't know. I just know that at this point, it is like nailing Jello to the wall. It'll never happen. It won't
I
stick.
don't even think it's going to happen then, you know, Karina.
Maybe not.
There's just going to be something else. Like maybe you'll get a boat or something, and you'll want to restore the whole thing, and you know what I mean? It'll be just some other project that'll come up on the way, and you'll just focus all your energy to that. So yeah, so like, does anyone actually have questions right now? We're at the halfway point, so anyone? No? Okay, so physical training. So we were talking about running. Oh, Nicola, are you wanting to ask something? You're on mute.
I got a question from Twitter for Karina that I got from one of my pink partners. So I lost it. Oh, have you ever had external voices that make you feel mom guilt, and how did you deal? So I'm not quite sure what that means, but maybe, you know, if someone ever kind of questioned you as a mom and your business, because I mean, it's not like you're no longer running a business out of your basement. You're now big time. So did anyone ever question you as a mom and with your business?
Oh, sure. I do. I'd say mostly it's internal, but yeah, I get the external, you know, voices as well. And I think what's important is that you have a core. You know, my husband is fantastic. He's a great sounding board. And then I have a few friends that, you know, if something is bugging me, I can go to them and they'll really set me straight. Because, you know, sometimes you can take that external feedback and then it starts to become a repeating loop in your mind. And until you voice it to somebody who you trust to give you good perspective, it may sit there for a while. So, you know, I think it's important that you don't ignore it. I think if something is on that repeating loop and you can't seem to let it go, maybe if that somebody's said at one point, then I think it's good to voice it, because that, you know, removes it from this dark place and brings it out into the light. And sometimes it looks very different when you do that. So I think that helps. And then also, I think what I've learned is that if something is bugging you that somebody has said, well, why is that bugging you? Is there something that maybe you're holding on to that it's just hit a trigger point? So it's good self-awareness sometimes when you have those experiences to maybe have a bit of self-reflection and see what's really going on. But I mean, the mom guilt, I mean, it happens all the time, and it's funny because I had a really interesting conversation with a good friend of mine who lives in Saskatoon, and I said, oh, I feel so guilty that I work and I'm not at the school all the time like the other moms, and you know, and I don't even know if my kids bring their homework in on time half the time, because we're really, you know, we don't have the time to be in it that much, you know, to be on them all the time. And you know, my girlfriend said, geez, well, I feel guilty that I'm not working and giving my daughters an example of a mom who's doing it all. And I thought, geez, I never thought that you would feel that way. And then I realized that doesn't matter. Now everybody's got their own guilt. It's there. We all have it.
It's so true. And it is also like very much self-imposed. I mean, I look at my own mom, and what we did when growing up. I mean, often you'll hear us, you know, when I was a kid, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, I don't really recall my mom once nagging me to get my homework done or anything like that, right? So I don't know. It's a bit self-imposed and kind of a sign of the times. And maybe we, like you say, we're expecting a lot of ourselves, and kind of the grass is always greener on the other side. But yeah. Any other questions out there? People can use hashtag #eMomNow if they want to ask anything. But what you were talking about, a run that Rocky Mountain Soap sponsored in Canmore, right?
Yes.
Just before we came on air here. And you say that raising kids and being an entrepreneur requires physical training. So in this kind of realm of balance, like, how do you do that? How? Because I'm I'm at a loss, to be honest, on how I can fit in any kind of me time, let alone any kind of time where I have to physically take care of myself. Like, so how are you doing that?
Well, you know what? It comes. Sometimes I'm really good at it, and then I'll have 3 months where I'm absolutely terrible at it, and then I suffer so much that I start to get into it again. And what I mean by that is like when I think about my day, the most strenuous part of my day is bedtime because that's when the kids are ready for bed, so they're not on their top form. They're hard to deal with, and that's the time where I'm always tired. So I think that, like, I know that when I'm physically taking care of myself and eating right, I have the stamina to last right through to bedtime. If I'm not taking care of myself, then that bedtime, that end of the day, becomes really painful for everybody. So what works for me is, and it changes up with the seasons and the kids' schedules and my husband's, but right now, what I'm doing is 3 days a week. I get the kids off to school at 8. They take the bus, and then I go right to the gym. And I'll be at the gym for an hour, and then I shower there and go right to work. So I've blocked my calendar for 3 days until 10 o'clock. So I don't start any meetings or work until then. So I think that's where, if you're an entrepreneur, you have some flexibility, but you have to have the discipline to be able to block your calendar. But you know what? I'm not sure I have. Actually, my husband downloaded a 7-minute workout. It's another app, and he loves it because you can always find 7 minutes. And the thing is, it's hard.
Is it intense? Like just mega intense for 7 minutes?
Yeah. Like you get 30-second breaks, but you go hard for 7 minutes, and it could be doing push-ups. I think all you need is a chair, and you're good. 7 minutes. So
Nicola is dying laughing there. It's like, I don't have 7 minutes.
I have 7 minutes. I have no good excuse. I don't have a valid excuse.
You have lots of good ones, just not valid ones. Yeah, I know. There's always, like, here in Vancouver, it's raining or it's whatever. Like, there's so many reasons to not go out and do it. But I'm like, 7 minutes. Maybe I could do 7 minutes. I have this thing that I'm consistently inconsistent.
yes.
And so I'll think about working out quite a bit. But then when I am kind of in that groove of working out, I'll do that maybe consistently for about a month or two, and then not really much for a month or two, and then back on. So I feel like that's better than nothing. It's like this effort of at least trying. But then I just talked to all these moms this weekend. They're all part of this mom running club, and they're all getting out there 3 times, 4 times a week. I mean, here in Vancouver, everyone's so darn healthy.
Yes, that's like Canmore.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
It's all that fresh air. Right.
But I think when the pain of not being somewhat, like, I don't mean to be athletic fit, but just fit enough that you can survive, you have stamina to actually live your busy life. When I start to feel like, okay, this is, I'm too tired to live my busy life, then I realize the pain of that and how much work it is forces me back into doing something, because I know, and mentally too, because I think I have a lot on my mind, and again, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm always thinking about how to do things better, and that never seems to go away. So for me, that mental cleansing of just having some activity, it's, I do get to the point where if I'm not doing it, life becomes really hard. And so when you start to feel that pain, there's that motivation to get back in shape, because I really feel like at this time in my life, you need to physically train to be good at, doing everything.
That's true. And, I had a coach that was just telling me it's all connected. So, because I used to feel guilt about going and working out in the middle of the day, and I'd be like, this, I have this nanny here, or I only have 5 hours, I really need to be working here. And she just said, if you don't have that all taken care of, it's all related, it's all kind of related. So don't look at it as, okay, you only have these 4 hours in the middle of the day, and therefore it's supposed to be work time and you can't go exercise, because that's kind of makes the whole machine run, right? It makes it all work. But yeah, so do you have any tips about how to do that? So you block off time in your calendar. Is there anything else that you can share with us? Any ideas around that?
Well, I guess what I do during that time is always evolving, and it's really depends on the season and my mood and how busy I am. If I'm in a period where things are very much in a routine,
Mm-hmm.
and I have more energy anyway, then I'll do something a little bit more strenuous. But for the days when I'm tired and I just don't have the energy to go hard, I'll just I'll bike very lightly, and I read my Kindle. I always make sure I have something interesting to read. My headphones are in, so I have music. So I'm still making it as enjoyable as possible. But you know what? Having said that, it's not perfect for me either. I just know that I've had too many periods where I've fallen off that, and it really affects my whole life. So I still struggle with it. But I do know that when I'm on it, I'm in a routine, it's better. And you know what? I probably need to get more tips on it, actually, as well.
I mean, people have made full businesses around that, have they not? Right.
Yes.
So, question from the group on how Heather actually had a bit of a seminar. I think it was last week on just ideas on how to summer-proof your business and just getting ready for the summer, because kids are getting out of school, and in this case, our case in Vancouver, our kids are already out of school.
Wow.
Because of strike and all, right? You guys know about that, right?
No.
So there's a big BC teacher strike. School is not actually supposed to be out of session until the 27th, and because of the job action, they're right now not in school. So it could be done, like they cleared out their desks and everything. But okay, so in terms of just summer-proofing your business, how are you doing that? How does the summer months affect you, and how are you kind of getting ready for them?
That is a great question. For one, I always find that I look forward to the summer because I'm not making lunches and having to rush the kids out of the door, so that I like that. But yeah, I'm trying to think. I have a couple of things that I do. So we often take long weekends and plan to get away with the kids. And actually, sometimes we just take our tent trailer 3 minutes down the road to Three Sisters Campground. But once you're there, you could be 5 hours away, into BC, and you wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Do little things like that. It's tough because, we want to make sure that the kids aren't just at home all day while we're at work. So we put them into camps. And camps, what we've learned, this is what my oldest daughter says to us: Mom, you're not allowed to put me in a camp anymore unless you ask me first. You always put me in things, and then I don't like it. And so we've learned what she likes. We make sure we communicate that in advance. But the kids are in, 2 or 3 camps, and then we try to take some time off, because I know, the summer is valuable, and I want to spend some time with them.
Yeah.
I've seen other companies where they have reduced hours. So a friend of mine who runs a communications company in Calgary, they'll actually close the office early every day, Monday to Friday, in order to let everybody off to enjoy the summer. And yeah, actually, I probably don't have a lot of good tips for that, because we haven't.
Yeah, though, of closing the office early, because it's not. I mean, it gives you a respite, but it also gives everyone else, and that makes happy employees. And Karina, they must love working for you, right?
Well, it's certainly not all the time, because, but I think we do. I think we do a decent job. We do try to make sure that we do run. We run fitness classes and yoga classes that people can go to that are paid, and we try to. Actually, we just put in the budget for this year that we're going to put in a powder day. So we have a powder. What do they call it? Somebody who's on watch for powder. So they're through the winter. Then they'll be like, oh, powder day is coming up tomorrow. They'll organize buses to come and pick everybody up, and we'll spend the day skiing a random close the office, take advantage, have a powder day. But yeah, summer's great. It's so short, especially here in the mountains, that I think you should do whatever you can to take advantage of it. Personally, enough, I think.
What other tips came out of that? Did you have, Heather, for any of that? Did you want to share any?
I think we focused it more on home-based. I think brick and mortar is a whole other thing, because you have to, with your lease, you probably have to be open a set amount of hours. So probably closing at noon every Friday probably isn't an option, especially in the malls. So ours was more based on home business when you already work from home 100% and now the kids are home. So what are you going to do to sort of reduce your hours? Because really you're not going to get as much done. That's just a fact of life. And after our really harsh winter, it was really brutal. You know, we want to get out there. We want to get out there and enjoy summer, and it's very short. So it was mostly tips on, you know, how to kind of pre-plan your business, you know, schedule some stuff, automate some stuff, delegate some stuff. Maybe you have to let stuff go for a couple months. And what to work on when you do have a short amount of time, and also how to keep the kids entertained, you know, when it's quiet time, mommy, work time. So we talked a lot about, you know, all the different age ranges for that, how to be able to, you know, work along when your kids are at home. So we just shared quite a few of those tips.
Awesome. So shifting gears, Nicola, is this your question about working with your husband, Nicola, or is it somebody in your community? Yours. I've actually worked with my husband before on a business, and it's safe to say this because it was mutually agreed that it was not a good idea. You know, because you're already thinking about your business. This is what we found. As an entrepreneur, you think about your business all the time. And then to have somebody else working on it with you that actually lives with you, that, you know, the conversations are constantly, we found were always about that. But it seems that you've been doing that now for 10 years, Karina. So what's your kind of perspective on all of that?
Yeah, actually, it's been 15 years, and we haven't done it any other way, because we bought the company together before we were married. So, so it is the only way we know of, you know, being a husband and wife and mother and father and business owners. But I have to say, as much as we've figured out a lot of things through experience, it's still challenging, and we still have rules that we're not allowed to break in order to keep us on track. For example, the first time somebody says, I don't want to talk about work, it's immediately end of discussion. That's the trigger to stop all work talk. You know, you know what, it's very rewarding, because on one hand, I would say that we understand each other, and if I'm busy traveling for a period of time, I really get full support because we're building this together. On the other hand, you know, we're both very intense people, and sometimes I just want to come home and not be intense, but he's intense. So, you know, we struggle on what, you know, that, you know, figuring out where work starts and ends and family starts and ends, and those lines are very, very blurred for us. And I would say, you know, probably 60% of the time it works really well, and 40% of the time it takes a lot of effort. So, you know, I'm trying to think of what other tips I could share. And then putting our responsibilities up very clearly, and knowing that at the end of the day, who's going to make the final call, and respecting that works for us as well.
So on that responsibility front, one thing that we found when we had this business together was there were things that we were both assigned to that we were great at, right? And then there were things that we were both assigned to that we were not really good at, that would be really critical to the business. And I found that it was getting tough to kind of have these conversations and call your partner out, your life partner and your business partner out on those types of things when they weren't you know, on the negative side of things is what I'm trying to say. So how have you navigated through things like that, and or have you had to navigate through that kind of thing?
Well, actually, I think that is an excellent question, because that's forced us to be better at our, because early on we were doers. We were very task oriented, because we were mopping the floors and ringing in sales and making soap and all of that. And now it's very much a pure leadership role. And so how we work with each other, and we just had this last week actually, where Cam was telling me some of the things that he's doing, these new initiatives, and I'd say, yeah, but you need to do it this way, and you have to consider this and this and this. And he's like, that's great feedback, but I really hate when you give it to me. Can you work? There's got to be a better way to say it. And I said, well, I don't want to say it so lightly that you don't get the intent in order to protect your feelings. Part of me just wants to tell you what I'm thinking so we can move on. But what I'm really learning is how, we have these conversations back and forth, and it's good for me because he'll challenge me on my style, my communication style, and we challenge each other on that, and then I can take that into my other relationships. So I do think, that has been a benefit, and how we work together is very much, is way more challenging than, how I deal with any of my other leadership teams. So it's almost like a really good training ground to figure out some of this stuff. And, he's trying to figure out it as well. So it feels like as much as it is challenging, we're going through it together and we're trying to help each other a bit. So it's frustrating, but I also see the benefit to it as well.
I had a friend who had a startup here, and like a tech startup here in Vancouver, and her husband was a venture capitalist, and so knew a lot of tech people, evaluated a lot of startups, but generally they wouldn't really talk about the business because it was her business and things like that. And so, but occasionally she would seek his advice or just want to rant because it's her husband and just talk about her business. And so she came home and she said something, maybe she had a tough day and she was just saying something, and she started being really, so he started giving her some feedback, and she was just being very, I guess, sensitive about it. And he said, oh, I'm so sorry. Did you want me to be the venture capitalist business guy, or do you want me to be your husband right now? Like, what? It was just a very confusing conversation. And so she said, I think I want you to be the venture capitalist guy, but I think I'm listening to this from you because you're as my husband, right? So it's just interesting conversations you have because of that dual relationship that you have. So does anyone have anything else to add or any questions to ask? No? It's been so great. I mean, we've covered so much ground. Do you have any final tips, Karina, things that you want to share with the moms that may be watching this? So many of them have dreams, of they'll have this home-based business. Maybe they're making baby blankets, or they might actually have their own soap company out there, and they're doing them on the baking trays in their house and bringing them to farmers markets and things like that. And some of them have no desire to be as big as Rocky Mountain Soap, but some of them really do. They want to have, they have big plans for their company. And so do you have any kind of, and a lot of those people might get naysayers too, to say this is only going to be a small business and it's a hobby and blah, blah, blah. So do you have any kind of feedback or words of encouragement or anything like that that you can share with them?
Yeah, first of all, I think, if somebody is out there and they're a mom and they're trying to do something on their own, I think it's amazing, because I had my company before I became a mom. I think if you're a mom and then trying to start something, that is harder. And I love to see moms doing stuff, especially because there's this interesting moment in your life that I've seen through my friends, is that when you have kids and you're out of the, you take a break from your career, your job, and then there's a reinvention period where you can start to question, well, am I going back to work? Am I going to be a mom? Or is there another thing that I can do, which is to become an entrepreneur? And then there's this creativity that starts to become unleashed. And I love to talk to people who are in that phase of really the reinvention. And I think that's extremely exciting. One thing I learned that that I'd love to tell my younger self is that, again, I can get very intense and very passionate about things. And, for so many years it was about go, 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 like bigger, better, faster. We need, and that's the perfectionist side of me as well. And now what I'm realizing is actually there's some value in being patient and taking things a little bit slower and really just doing it well, but doing it a bit slower. And I think it just creates excellence. And I think that's going to be my new chapter. That I wish, maybe I wouldn't have been able to listen to that feedback when I was younger because I had so much in me to give, so much energy and drive. But and not that that's waning. It's just surfacing very differently. And I think I really like, I really admire people who can do that, who can really just think something through and execute it very patiently but very solid, rather than just going off and trying to do everything and potentially burning yourself out. And when you're a mom and you're running your own business, do you have to ramp it up very quickly, or is that, do you really want that, or do you want to just position yourself, so that you're building slowly, building slowly, building slowly, and then as you have more time, the kids are in school full time, maybe eventually they're leaving home or having their own lives, then you start to ramp up. I think there's some interesting things there around timing. But if you really want to grow and go big, that's exciting too. And I love that. That's my personality. So yeah, it's different for everybody, I think.
So what was that process then of going big? Like, did you always know that that's what you wanted when you bought that location, that first location?
No, in fact, our dream at that time, we thought very, very small because it was, our first venture into a real business, we had done little bits of entrepreneurial projects before, but this was the first, substantial one. And, when we first bought it, it was, we'll have 2 stores and we'll make, $200,000 a year, and we'll bike and hike and enjoy Canmore and have a decent income. Well, we weren't, we built it up to 2 stores and we weren't making that money. That was, I don't know where we did the math, but it's not true. That wasn't true. And then it wasn't well thought out. It just happened. It just thought, oh well, we opened another store and that was really fun and it's doing well. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. And it just started to self-perpetuate itself until we got to the point where, wow, okay, this is actually a decent size. We need to start to really think about this rather than, people that have been working with us for more than 5 years. We have somebody who's been with us for 10. They'll be able to tell you there's been a difference where we would just we'd see a shiny object and we go after it, and we'd see another object and we go after that. And in hindsight, that was great. It allowed us to grow. But I think we were very painful to work with because there was no focus and priorities. And now, like I said, we're entering into a different phase where it's like, okay, we're not going to do 20 things. We're going to do 3 or 1, and we're going to do it well. We're going to make it impactful. And that's how we're growing now. But in the beginning, we were growing by just doing, everything we thought. And it wasn't even deliberate. We weren't doing everything just for growth. We were doing it because it just was exciting. We weren't even thinking too much about it. It just goes back to being naive and curious, and we were just enjoying it and doing it and taking on new accounts and going out and opening new stores. And the growth really just happened, and then it started to become addicting. And then we started to really think about it more and plan.
So what was that expansion path, so you had your 1 store, then when did you open your 2nd store?
About 2 years later.
And then when did you get to, say, 5 stores?
And then we had 1 year where we did 4 stores in a row, so it would have been, we went up to 10 stores, and then last year we closed 2. We picked 4 locations, and those stores never really took off. That was good learning. But I'm trying to remember the exact. So we probably had 5 years. In the first 5 years, we had 3 stores. And then after that, I think we opened up 1 more, and then we had a year where we opened up 4, and then the last 3 years we haven't opened up any new stores because it almost felt like now the company got to another level. We had to pause and just make sure that the foundation, we were building the foundation, getting our the people in place and processes and structure, and you almost started to get to that medium-sized business.
So one last question before we sign off. I love this idea of being deliberate and thoughtful about what your priorities are from instead of doing everything, you're just going to pick a few things or one thing to do and do that well, and that leads to excellence. Sometimes there's the added pressure, though, of having competitors and other factors in that space. And Rocky Mountain Soap, you aren't free of competition. You do actually have quite a bit of competitors. And so what's the answer for that? Because there are people out there that are worried that someone might steal their idea, or maybe they're not quite established and somebody else might come into their space. What's sort of your feedback on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're worried about somebody coming into your space, how different are you? I would question your business model.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I alluded to this before, where we went through this period where we felt like our focus on natural wasn't enough. I felt very exposed, and like we didn't have a good business model at that point until we started to really think about what natural meant, and how that goes into our built environment and our packaging, and there's some other ways that we're starting to live what natural is in a more broad way. So for me, that's our source of differentiation, and so I would say that if you're worried about competition, I would start to think about what makes you different that can't easily be copied.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, a book called Outthink the Competition that I would recommend reading, and it talks about these different. It sounds very high level, but it's not. It's these tiny stratagems that you can apply to your business model to say, well, it's good. I'm making the baby bibs or bandanas, and that's great. But what else am I going to do that makes it mine? That's not copyable or easily copyable. That it would take somebody effort and time in order to catch up to where I'm at. And if you can't figure that out, then you will have competition come in. That will happen, and I would be concerned about that too if you're planning on growing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think about American Girl. My girls are crazy for American Girl right now. And you can actually make a tall doll. Anyone really can manufacture a 19-inch or whatever they are, 17-inch doll. And the thing that has made American Girl really, other than the quality of the doll is actually better, is it that much better according to the price that they charge for those dolls? I don't know. But, is it, the quality of the doll is better. But what I think American Girl has done that has made them special is just all of the attention to detail around the branding. When you go into one of their boutiques, it's just incredibly well branded. And the items that you can purchase to go along with it, just the entire packaging, everything about it is quite well thought. But then on top of that, they've also come up with or encouraged and fostered a very vibrant community of fans that are all about American Girl. So I posted an Instagram photo of my daughters holding their American Girls, and I could not believe how much engagement I was getting from total strangers on my own personal Instagram feed, because people were just so enthusiastic about American Girl. Fanatics, like 13-year-old fanatics that were really, what number of doll is that? And so those are the things that are really not easily duplicated. And I think that's what you're driving at too, is that like you might be making a bandana, but what are the other things that you're adding in there to make you stand out from all the other bandana makers on the market?
And it could be the stories behind the bandanas, where the fabric's being sourced from, your visual identity, or how you're selling it. There's so many other things that you can layer on that now all of a sudden you've got a business model that can't easily be copied. So, yeah, you're exactly right. I think American Girl is a great example.
Well, thank you so much, Karina. We are at, I can't believe that hour, it went so fast. And if people wanted to find out more about you and Rocky Mountain Soap, how would they go about doing that?
There's a little bit on our website. If people, I'm always happy to help people if they think that I can add some value. So, my email is Karina, just my name, at Rocky Mountain Soap. So if there's people out there who think that there's something specific I can help them with, I'm open to them calling me. I'd like to do that.
Do you have a personal Twitter handle or anything, or is it just the main?
Twitter is Karina Birch, and that's what I use mostly is Twitter. So I would probably the best one.
That's awesome. Well, so that was a really great session, and people are going to still be chatting using eMom Now, and as I said, this will be posted on emomnow.com and available on our YouTube channel for viewing. So when we're all done, we'll share that out with you, and you can share it with whoever you'd like to send it on to. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Christine. That was a lot of fun.